What, sir?
Are we ready to start this meeting? All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Webster Pranzo. I'm the vice chair of this board. I'd like to call this meeting to order. First of all, this is only my first time doing this in person. I've done this before virtually. So please bear with me. I might stumble here and there for the whole thing. First of all, I'd like to call a motion to approve the July 8th, 2020 minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All right. Hearing none, the minutes have been approved. Next, I'd like to approve the July 14th minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Next board meeting will be October 7th, via the Fort Dodge Correctional Facility. To get this meeting started, we'll have a welcoming from Cheryl Deng, our warden.
We were trying to figure out if Randy was on the phone.
I don't believe so.
Is Trent with us?
Don't believe so.
I'm gonna go along with Lewis, that I might stumble along too. I'm Cheryl Dunn. I'm the warden here at the prison. I want to welcome everybody. I'm pushing the scones and the apple turnovers and the popcorn, if you once again want anything. So currently, I gotta look, our count is at 674. Of that, we have 107 in minimum live out, which is outside the fence. Joey's gonna talk about that a little bit later. And then we have a 567 inside. I believe that right now today, we have 20 openings for officers with some offers being made. And then 4 RNs with some offers being made. I'm looking at Carrie. We have a clerk specialist, a safety officer that's open, activity specialist that's open, and a sergeant that is currently open. So those are our open open positions. I'm gonna have unit managers and then Counselor Joan Bryman, that's been here probably as long as I have around, that we're really young. Do a couple of presentations about ICIW. I wanted somebody to talk about the Urban Institute Print Grant. And I think we've talked about it before a little bit, where we were one of 5 prisons that were selected, the only women's prison across the nation to, I don't know if it's accepted, because really they deep dive into our culture and judge leadership and how we do things, and we were accepted. I said that I would do it. Sometimes it gets a little hard to hear the negative things about what you're leading and how you're running the institution with human beings, but our mission is always to pick up where we fall. We know that we don't make always the right decisions, and but we think we make a lot of good decisions. And I do know that we have very committed staff people. And with that, I want to have all the people in the room introduce themselves, because we have new employees that said yes to the job. We have mature employees that have been here for a while. And then we also have visitors. And it's nice to have visitors, because sometimes we get sick of looking at each other all the time. Well, I do anyway. So, and I didn't know if the board wants to introduce themselves as well, but I'll start with, I'm gonna put Jennifer Swihart on the spotlight. Yeah, I want you to stand.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Swihart. I have worked here at ICIW for a little over 24 years now. The first 7 years of my career were as an officer, and then the last 17 have been as a correctional counselor. I have worked in almost every building on grounds with almost every kind of population that we have here. Thank you.
I'm Adam Owen, I'm a unit manager here. I've been here 17 years. I started as an officer, moved up to a captain. I just recently promoted to unit manager, so I kind of worked with everybody too in every different aspect, security and treatment, so. Mike.
I'm Mike Leasing, I'm a unit manager here. I've been at ICIW for about 9 years. Prior to that, I was in the community. I currently oversee our mental health population.
I'm Tim Dar, I'm also a unit manager here. I'm one of the mature people. 21 years here, and I work with a lot of populations in the prison and the different. I started as an officer as well, so yeah. Thank you.
Joan Ryman, I have been here, as she said, a little while, 23 years in November, so came in as a counselor, but I've had lots of opportunities here. I've been in CERT, I'm currently on the staff support team. I've done all kinds of things here, and like Ms. Swihart, done about every population we have here, so.
Good morning, Brian Wrights. 27 years with the department. Worked here, I've worked at Newton Correctional, I've worked at the Training Academy, a number of positions throughout my career, so.
Brian is also our food connoisseur.
Yeah. And I suppose my tie on the social awareness security.
Yes.
I'm Courtney Arino, I'm the treatment director here at ICIW, and I have held this role since 2016, and prior to that, I worked in both 5th and 2nd District, and same as Joan, in November, it will be 23 years in corrections as well.
Michelle, we're not leaving you out.
Good morning, I'm Shelley Seitz, I'm the reentry coordinator, Iowa Workforce Development. Previous corrections for a long time, so I'm over 20 years as well, and now they get to be my partners as we do personal and human services for the employment itself.
Hello, my name is Kenzie Novoa. I'm a newbie. A week ago in one of the corrections officers.
I'm Jen Moore, I've been here for a long time, 1 week.
So I'm very excited to be here.
Blair Moore, I'm going to be a correctional officer here. I don't have any prior experience. I do have an associate's degree, but I'm excited to be here.
Hello, my name's Amy Owen. I'm the training specialist here at ICIW. I've been here for 14 years. Started out as a correctional officer and promoted to training specialist.
Hello, I'm Patty Guevara, day 4. And I'll be teaching, working with the ladies in the education area.
Sally. I'm gonna have everybody introduce.
Sally Kramer, I'm the Deputy Director for the Department of Correctional Services, oversight of community-based corrections. And this is going on year 34.
Her claim to fame today is her granddaughter Kennedy had a choice between an Iowa onesie and an ISU onesie, and she picked ISU.
I'm Courtney Curry. Prior to working, well, I just started last Friday, but I worked for 18 years in the Department of Human Services, and I came and joined you guys. So I'm going to be a correctional counselor at
Hi, my name is Whitney Ebb. I just started on Friday as well. I have a background of working with juveniles for several years and doing investigation work.
Hi, I'm Lori Woodard. I'm the Deputy Warden here at ICIW. I've been here since 2016, and prior to that, going on 26 years with the department in 2nd Judicial, 5th Judicial, and then came here to ICIW.
Good morning, my name is Deanne Crum. I'm the Associate Warden of Administration here at ICIW. I'm mature, but a baby here at the DOT. I've only been here for 6 months, so previously came from another state agency, and then prior to that, I was military law enforcement in Australia.
I'm Carrie Hunter. I'm Nursing Services Director here at ICIW. I've been in the department for 20 years. I was a staff nurse for 5 years, a nursing supervisor for 5 years, and then the nursing director at ICIW for 10.
I'm Natalie Pickett. I've been here, I'm the nursing supervisor here, been here about a little over a year and a half. And then before that, I was at Mercy Clinics.
I'm Todd Robinson. This is day 5, and I will be a food service supervisor.
Great.
I'm Matt Mathis, and I will be at NCF 2 weeks, so part is still pretty new. And I'm DMAC Education Coordinator and Life Skills Instructor, so I'm also mature, but I'm a baby in the summer.
Dan Clark, IPI Director. So we have a program here with maybe 110 women, and then off-ground programs as well.
Sarah Finneran, Research Director for Central Office. Prior to this, I think I've been in this role for 3 years now. It's been a really quick 3 years. Prior to this, I was the Research Director for one of the Department of Corrections sister agencies that oversees research and does independent, objective work for them.
Steve Dick, Financial Manager, Iowa Department of Corrections. Been in the state for 24 years, and I will be presenting after a little bit, so.
And I'm not letting him go until he gives me back a position.
We're not gonna go there.
Gordon Dom, I knew you were empathetic there. Good morning, everyone. I'm Beth Singer, I'm the Director of Corrections. I'm much more mature than Gordon Dom and Tim combined. I've been working this field for about 20 years. I worked in community-based corrections for about 10 years. Worked on the national scene for a few years, and then came back and work on research and risk reduction. And I'm the director for over 3 years. I age in dog years. Every year I'm a director, I age 7 years. So it's good these days, I feel, you know? Anyway, glad to be here.
I'm Alexis Clary. I'm going to be a CEO at NCF. It's 21 days and counting. And
Yeah, does the public want to introduce themselves? Do you feel comfortable doing it?
I think we could probably wait until
Oh,
if there's
sorry.
public comments at the end, we can
Oh,
wait to do that.
okay, then you get to introduce yourself.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, my name is Nick Crawford. I am the Communications Director for the Department of Corrections, and I have now been with the department for a year this month.
Do you guys want to? People see your names, but if you want to say who you are? If not, I'm going to turn it over to,
Yeah.
I think it's Joan first.
I just wanted to note for everybody in the room that I'm a proud Hawkeye, so.
Yes.
Well, I just wanted to add that it's really incredible to hear how long everyone's been here and the longevity. It really speaks to the department and how well y'all are taken care of, especially the way the economy is now, people quitting jobs or people not wanting jobs. It's good to hear that people are enjoying their jobs and staying a long period of time. Really encouraging.
I'm a proud Hawkeye too.
Yeah.
So, Dad graduated from my in '64, I graduated in '93. Hawkeye. And my younger sister graduated too, so total Hawkeyes. Alright. Like I said, I've been at ICIW for quite some time. I had been in our minimum live out unit now for a little over 2 years. And we have currently 107 women out there. We have beds for 120. Those women are hopefully very close to being released. So our main focus for them is really getting them ready to be out in the community. And one of the biggest things that we hope to do for them, because it's going to really help their reentry, is to get them really good jobs. And I think that we have been really working hard on that for the past couple of years since COVID. COVID stopped all of that. We couldn't let the women off grounds. So for the past year, we have really been working to bring that back. And we have worked with Dan, having many of our women work at the Iowa Prison Industries building, which is the big Morton building at the end of the property here. And they do upholstery, they do clothing, they do some paperwork, like microfiche kind of stuff, copying, stuff like that. They also have two jobs at IPI that are really private sector, but in the IPI building. One of them is anagram balloons, and then the other is timberline. Anagram balloons packages those big beautiful balloons that you have out in your yard, the big nylon balloons. They package them for the companies, and Timberline actually does harness work for electronics. So they put like electronic cords together. Those jobs pay very, very well for the women. They get around $11 to $12 an hour, and they bring home about 20% of that. So the rest of that goes to pay off their fines and fees and for the pay for stay. So they bring home once a month around $400 or $500, which is a lot of money for them here. But the women that work there are able to pay off tens of thousands of dollars in fines over a year or two. So it's a huge bonus to them going back out into the community, because when they re-enter, they're just overloaded with past restitution, with fines, with all this financial debt. And if they're able to work at IPI and the other two jobs that I'll talk about, they're able to pay off a great majority, if not all of that. So the other two off-grounds jobs, main jobs that we also have two ladies that work at central office doing clerical work and answering phones. And then we also have 3 ladies that work off grounds at IPI showroom, doing again clerical work and answering phones and things like that for IPI showroom. They do not get, their pay is more than the ladies inside the fence, but their pay is not the $12 an hour. So we do have 2 really amazing jobs that we've been able to institute in the past 6 to 12 months. The first is Diamond Crystal, which is a food service industry packaging job. Their main offices are here in Mitchellville, so the ladies, actually it's about 2 blocks away. The ladies get to walk there. So we have 7 ladies that are approved for that position. They are machine operator, and then they also have case packer. The machine operator, they start out at $13 an hour, and then every 30 days they're offered a 25-cent increase up to the first 90 days. So within 90 days they're making $13.75 an hour. And again, they get about 20% of that, and then the rest goes to pay off their fines and fees. Once they leave here, they are more than welcome to stay with that job. And we've had ladies that actually have probably around a half a dozen now that have kept with that employment once they leave here. And one lady in particular that will be leaving next week was offered, because she had her forklift certification, which is one of the things that we do offer in MLO as well with our warehouse and with IPI, is we offer forklift certification with the CERCA program. She was able to get a job with Diamond Crystal starting at $18 an hour, operating forklift in one of their warehouses. So that's a huge benefit to her to walk out of here making that kind of money. It's amazing, and have a job. It's gonna really help her reentry. So the other job that we have recently been coordinating with one of our actual other state agencies, and that is with the Iowa Veterans Home in Marshalltown. We were approached sometime not too long ago by Dan about having been reached out from the Iowa Veterans Home about their lack of staff for their kitchen workers. And could we in some way coordinate working together to have the women come up and work in their dietary department? We obviously have women that work in our dietary department here, so they know those skills and can work those machines, and it has been an incredible partnership. They make $13.54 an hour to start out with. And again, get 20% of that, and the rest goes to their fines. Currently, we have 8 women that go off grounds to work at IBH on alternating shifts. So they take 4 every day. The Iowa Veterans Home comes and transports them in one of their vans, so they drive down from Marshalltown, pick them up, drive them back up there. The vans have cameras in them, and if something happens, they bring them back. But once they go, they leave here about 5:45 in the morning, drive up to the Veterans Home, and they work a 12-hour shift. And then they drive them back home. And they work every other day. So they do 2 shifts, so they'll take 4 on Monday, they have Tuesday off, they'll go again Wednesday for a 12-hour shift. So that's been working very, very well. They absolutely love them and have been so thankful for their help. They've had no issues, they've all been working very, very well with them. They get along well with everybody. We've had to work out some like separate eating areas, some lockers, some things like that, but the Iowa Veterans Home has been so accommodating to all of them. One of the things that we did have to work out with them, which is absolutely amazing, the 2nd District does not have anywhere in Marshalltown to parole to. There is no shelter. They closed down the women's half of the work release. We had nowhere. If they wanted to continue that employment, there was nowhere for them to go if they didn't have family in Marshalltown. So the Iowa Veterans Home has 10 cottages that they normally allow the families of the veterans to come stay in, but they're just not used. So they're opening those cottages up to the women to parole to. We have had the parole office from the 2nd District come and check them out. We went with them. They are thrilled with it. So the women can stay there at least 2 months for $20 a month. Save up, get an apartment. The POs will help them get the apartment after that. If they need to stay longer, they can. But so we have housing and employment. They have substance abuse programs up there. They are absolutely so ready to take them on. So, questions about what we're doing with MLO?
Joe, do you want to mention how after a woman is released, the IDH is offered to hire them as a state employee?
Thank you, sorry, I guess I alluded to that, I didn't say that, thank you. They are willing to become state employees once they're released with full state benefits. So I just, in fact, yesterday, helped one of my girls put in an online application for that. So she will be a full-time state employee when she leaves here.
How about the people that work at VA, will they qualify for family benefits at some point in time? You know? If they continue to work for VA?
I don't think that's, I think you have to build it in the military. I don't know that if you work for the VA, that you get the, no?
I
don't
guess
think
I've
that-
never worked for the VA. I worked for the federal government before I retired, but I didn't. I was just hoping that they qualify for federal package is pretty good benefit, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my father worked for the Veteran Administration. He was a vet, so I don't know the answer to that.
I think that they qualify, but I don't know.
Yeah, I am not sure to that, but
But
just being.
it should be something that you should pursue if they.
Yeah,
know the answer to
absolutely.
that.
We will talk to them about that with the VA home,
Okay.
for sure.
Good question. Well, first of all, I'm really surprised at how good the rates are. To be honest, that's still really good.
Yeah.
But what percentage of women would you say need some kind of daily wage?
Oh, if they have one of those off-grounds jobs, all of them. It's like, I've had girls that have paid off $20,000-$30,000. It's insane, and they rack it, because women tend to do property crimes. They do a lot of thefts, ID thefts, forgeries, so they rack up those bills big. And they annoy our financial department to no end by getting statements all the time. Can I please get a new statement about what I've paid off? and they're so excited, so, yeah.
That's always a big concern, people need to such a tough struggle to get that.
Yeah.
You can cancel some of that out before you get out, that's
Yeah,
incredible.
I've had so many women, I've paid it off, completely paid it off.
So you
Yeah,
can get out and actually start a life.
exactly. Yeah, have some credit, not be loaded down with debt, it's huge. Yeah.
Anything else? Alright. With that, we're going to have, the ICIW unit managers tell us a little about their housing guidelines. Some of the housing guidelines. All right, morning again, everybody. Adam Owen again, and Dar, Mike Leasing. We're the 3 of the 4 unit managers here. We just kind of want to give a rundown of some of the changes we've made over the last few months. Initially, we used a transition incentive program where it was like a tip levels, progressive housing based on behaviors and privileges. One of the things we were starting to find that was harder to manage with the population we have, being the only women's prison we have, everybody from orientation to short-term offenders to minimum live-outs, long-term, all those things. So we have everything in between. We got to a point where it was difficult to manage transition incentive program with the population we have. We also have an aging population that was in a situation where they were the higher levels, but in a unit that wasn't gonna be good for them in the long run in the future. So we wanted to look at trying to get back to using our housing the way it was designed, and ways to do that. So last fall, probably, right around fall, we formed a committee with the unit managers, a couple captains, who else was on it? Natalie was on it. We had a pretty diverse group of people looking at things and different ways we could look at managing our population that better suited our housing and what our needs are. So what we've developed is we are housing people based on their length of sentence, similar to kind of how the men's institutions do it a little bit, where different lengths of stays are in different places, just on a much, much smaller scale. So some of our goals in that were to determine what classifications we needed, what the breakdown would be, what the difference would be between our short-term and our long-term populations, figuring out how to make something that was easy to identify but not difficult to try to enforce or get behind and explain. So what we've kind of developed is a 10-year mandatory and above is considered long-term. So anybody with a mandatory minimum sentence of 10 years or longer is qualified as long-term or life. Anything above that, anything below that would be considered short-term because they have the eligibility of parole. So that's kind of what we started with in the guidelines, and we had to run numbers and figure all those things out. So this was kind of a roughly 8-month process, going through everything, making sure numbers would work with our housing plans, sitting up, figuring out where people would be, moving things accordingly. So we developed a plan of how to house people, and then we wanted to look at property allowances, privileges, some of those things to where someone who's gonna be here 2 years shouldn't have as much of a need for some of the comfort items as someone who's gonna be here the rest of their life. So we factored a lot of those things into it. We looked at all of those levels of everything. We included our property sergeant, and our activity specialists who do a lot of the activities for people and try to get as much input as we could to figure out which ways we could best serve everybody and consistently. So kind of what we came up with is we have an orientation status here that's up to 45 days. They typically have the fewest privileges just because they're the newest here. Getting them kind of established, figuring out, getting to know them a little bit, and then determining where they go from there. So once they're out of that, there's the short-term general population status, and then the long-term status. So the short-term, like I said, is under a 10-year mandatory. Because of the potential property changes that haven't been put in place yet, we looked at people who had been here that would have met qualifications when they started here, but didn't anymore, and kind of factored some of those people into those decisions to where we weren't going to eventually take away all the property for someone who still has 5 or 6 years left on their stay minimum. So GP is now our general population building. It's 4 pods with 2 pods that hold 96 and 2 pods that hold 64.
Correct.
And then we have an intermediate unit where our orientation's held. There's 2 different pods there with 46 beds apiece.
One houses just orientation. Once they're classified out of that, they'll move into either a GP status or the long-term status. Typically, since we started this in June, we've had one person come in that would qualify as the long-term based on the new guidelines, so everybody's been pretty short-term. In those statuses, in the GP units, we have different levels based on employment status, some of which is because the people that typically work about a 6-hour day. They're working during the day, they don't have as much free time to do things, so they are allowed sometime later in the evening to, socialize, relax, enjoy the yard, their bays, TVs, things like that. Where the people who aren't working currently, it's a shorter window, but it's the same amount of time, essentially. That's kind of one of the biggest challenges is figuring out where that stands. A lot of needless jobs were here, and we were trying to clean some of those things up too, and so this has been a good way to balance that and figure out where our starting point is at. Our long-term status, there's 2 different units for that. One was the designed medical unit, I guess is the best way to describe it. It's closer to medical, it's ground floor, there's a lot more space in the rooms. Every 2 rooms have an adjoining bathroom, things like that. So it's a little more comfortable, it's more like an apartment or a college dorm kind of setup. So those are being utilized for the longer term populations. They will have eventually more benefits along the way. More privileges, more activities, things they'll be able to do to kind of build a community around that. And then we have another unit that's a little bit higher level where it's better behaved people that don't get in a lot of trouble, that eventually we're gonna have a dog program. We're looking at a few options now to try to get that set in stone and figure out what that's gonna be. But a dog program to where they can train dogs and provide a service that can be benefit outside of here. Our property changes, like I kind of mentioned, our general population is gonna have fewer overall creature comforts. They're allowed to buy clothing, electrical items, a lot of those things. We're gonna cut that down to essentials and not some of the comfort stuff. The long-termers are allowed to buy their own bedding, comforters, blankets, sweatshirts, clothing, jackets, a lot of things that someone who's gonna be here 18 months or less really doesn't need, and it becomes a distraction from trying to focus on getting their reentry ready to go. And then some of the things that have stayed the same is our mental health population, our isolation population. When quarantine, we have a quarantine unit where people come in because of the COVID guidelines. They start off there and they kind of move into orientation from there. We also have segregation, some of the things that we have done to adjust some of those factors have helped out, I think, quite a bit. We found a lot of benefit with staffing. We haven't had to increase our staffing tremendously because of it. Like Cheryl said earlier, we're short 20 officers right now. So we were having a hard time managing the population with the staffing we had as it was. So this did create a big change in numbers, but it also created an easier environment for a lot of people. The job status of people has been extremely beneficial. I think we're going to keep monitoring it and see, but we've noticed a decrease in some of our instances of, disruptive offenders or incarcerated individuals. Some of the problem people who were notoriously in and out of segregation before are less frequent in there now. There's a little more purpose for them, a little more drive to get some of those goals completed, get a job, maintain employment, and some of those things.
Just to jump in on the job thing, we went from not being able to fill all of our facility jobs. We had a lot of people just didn't want to work. With the housing changes so that they could live in the unit they wanted to, and it's one of kind of a perk now. Now we don't have enough jobs to employ everybody. So all of our jobs are full currently. Right, Lori? Pretty much. Yeah.
They created an environment where jobs are actually a premium and people are actively looking, and it's a better problem to have than not being able to fill everything. So that's been a benefit overall. That's kind of the main stuff. The property thing we haven't put in effect the property changes yet. We wanted to give everybody some time to adjust to the change in housing, because anytime we change massive amounts of housing, people get uprooted, they were comfortable. We try to give them some time to kind of get their feet underneath them and get a little more comfortable before they move on to the next thing. So, any questions?
What's your logic behind moving by length of stay versus type or seriousness of the crime?
It's mostly for the long-term effect. We have some long-termers that have been here 15, 20 years. They were housed in regular statuses with other people. There wasn't anything wrong with it, but it was something where eventually we're getting to a point where we have a lot of aging population. And the unit they were living in is a two-tiered unit. It was a two-tiered unit with upstairs and downstairs. It was just limited bed space. Now they're all in one area. We're working on a plan to have a lot more bottom floor bedding. So every room has 4 beds right now. We're gonna try to get 3 of those 4 on the ground floor, so there's no bunks to climb, things like that. They're bigger rooms, more space for those that have walkers or wheelchairs or other medical needs. A private bathroom, shared between 6 people, but instead of 1 bathroom shared for 96.
I do want to tack on, one of the reasons that we started looking at it is because when officers, for safety and security reasons, when you do room searches, people can, well, I don't know if any of you guys do this, but have a lot of stuff sometimes. And that's same with all humans. And so we want officers to have an ease of going in and searching for contraband. And if we allowed 700 people to have all the continuum of property, it's just not feasible. And we want those 5 years and 10-year sentences to really focus on getting on out of here. Not that they can't be comfort, all their core needs are met. And then finding the purpose for people that are serving almost life or life. What does that look like for them? How do we keep hope alive? How do we balance out that they're here for a reason, but yet they're still alive and they're human and they need those creature comforts, balancing out victims' concerns, and then just knowing as we're all here in the community with them, what helps them out and then helps the staff out that are on the units. So it's about property, safety and security for officers going in, and some motivation.
Like I said, the transition program that we had, it worked. It's something that works well for the men. It's a little bit different for women because there's different needs, there's different things that they value. Relationships with people are more important than where they're living or what property they have. So trying to group some of those people together in better groups and quieter groups to where there's not maybe one disruptive person out of the entire unit that's causing chaos for everybody. Things like that, trying to make it a little more livable day to day.
The other thing I just want to say is we're in the process of this, so what we have been forthcoming about is this isn't we didn't reach the end. We're navigating how everything is going to look because the 5-year sentence is going to get back out with their kids and their family. The life or near life sentences aren't, and so how that's going to look at is still being looked at. It just can't all be done at the same time. So we're taking steps, pausing, readjusting, taking steps, pausing, readjusting. So we've been pretty open with the women about this, that I know you want that, but can you just, we're trying to get there. And things won't be the same as they were pre-COVID because we have a new housing plan and because we have to do some operational things differently for safety and security. So it's not the end, it's just, we're in the baby phases of just reassessing every single time. And we know that we did some stuff not wrong, but we need to readjust it. And then there's some things that we did well.
There's, but not really. We didn't really look at anything. We tried to model it a little bit off of how the men's institutions operate as a whole. The one idea that was out there was trying to make each unit a mini institution in one way or another. So the longer term people were in one place, the shorter term people were in another place. Things like that, we were trying to balance some of that along with the current system we had. We took a lot of things from that and tried to implement it into it in ways that would benefit both.
And with the tip system, we ran into an issue where approximately 650 women in here, and then what would you say, 3/4 of them were all the higher tip levels at some point, and they were sitting and waiting in other housing units because there was never gonna be a bed available for them in the highest tip, you know, and some of them sat for a couple of years sometimes, where they could get moved.
I think one of the advantages that this provides is that it starts on day one when they get here. And so when we house them based on their sentence length, we can more easily identify those like individual case plans, so those individual needs straight from day one, and we can really shift the focus more toward that reentry programming. So.
The other part I want to interweave, sorry, then I'll shut up. Not really. Sit down. I want to say is that we have a discipline matrix that is pretty clear to the women and to the staff, so that people aren't concerned, people aren't wondering, am I going to get in trouble for this? We have a system in place that allows officers and staff to look at the discipline tree if somebody is caught out of place of assignment. You know, do you go to jail for that? Not really, unless you're trespassing in somebody's restroom. But it's like, is that really segregation? No, but it's an immediate sanction. You go back to your unit for the night, and then it progresses along with other types of rule violations. So we're just trying to, for lack of a better word, user-friendly for everybody. So we're all, meaning the women and us, are all on the same page.
It's easier for staff too to understand who's where when they're housed that way. They know when they're walking into, you know, our long-term unit, they know exactly what population they're dealing with that day. Where before they could walk in and there might be a mix of everybody, and you know, it could be there's a handful of people that are getting along fine, and then all of a sudden something happens, and it's something that typically we see with more shorter-term people. Our longer-term people weren't the ones having recurring issues or kind of the blow-up of emotional release of whatever is going on in their life, whether they lose custody of their kids or they're being losing those things. The longer-term people have fewer of those instances of the meltdown type of behavior.
And having those expectations laid out, like you said, makes, you know, punishment and consequences even across the board. Everyone.
And that was kind of the first level of everything. That was done before any moves were made. And that was kind of what drove some of it too, was what was laid out was hard to enforce, and it was hard to keep track of with everybody kind of scattered. So it was a factor that played a big role in it.
So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your lot of words you gave, Mike.
Like, I love your bodyguards. Bodyguards here today or
All right, Director Bev Skinner is going to take us through the director's updates.
You guys want to stand behind me? You guys are so poised. I don't mean, you can absolutely stand behind me if you want to. You guys did very well. Thank you, Ward. Very proud of ICIW and the work that's going on here. Very proud of the staff. Great presentation, you guys. It's just amazing work. And I think, you know, they really here at ICIW really are thoughtful and strategic about how they approach being very gender responsive. And I just want to thank, you know, Ward and Dom and your leadership team as well as your staff. Your leadership's incredible, and I'm just very proud. So it's been a while since I've seen you all, so great to be here today. So I'm going to give you some brief updates. Some of you may know on August 26th, I was on Iowa Press. We had an opportunity to sit down and talk about kind of the state of corrections. I think it went fairly well. And you know, I think it was a great opportunity for the department to talk about the great work we're doing. And so if you haven't seen it, I recommend it's on Iowa Press PBS, Iowa PBS. Just we're very proud and honored to have that opportunity. Also, I have something I want to share with you all, is that recidivism has gone down another year. So we go around 2 years in a row. So starting in FY15, we started seeing a steady increase. Since last year, FY21, and this year, we've had 2 years of reduction. So this past year, we had a 1.7% reduction. We're down to 37%. For almost a total of 2.8% reduction total in the last 2 years. And you're probably asking, how did this happen? Mary, because I know you're going to ask me that question. I know you have a mask on, but I know your eyes. In this
I've
way.
been asking you this question ever since I
I
came.
know,
on
I
board.
mean, we've been doing this,
Before
you and I have been doing this for 7 years, so I know how this works. That, sometimes it was a little challenging to really just pinpoint what actually is driving down recidivism. We know the evidence-based practices, we know what things are that we need to do to reduce recidivism, and we've been doing all those things. And we've been doubling down on them for the last 5+ years. So I think we're seeing the fruits of those labors. I think we're increasing treatment. We had the SRR grant, the statewide recidivism reduction grant. We did all those evidence-based practices. I think that's paying off. Our staff are really committed and knowledgeable about what works in terms of reducing recidivism. So I see it holistically as staff are doing the work that they're doing. They're doing an amazing job. They care about people. They believe in second chances. They believe people can change. And they truly are committed to using evidence-based practices. So I think it's a combination of many, many factors that's moving us in the right direction after many, many years. So I know you have a question after that. So anyway, so that's the good news. We're gonna keep our foot on the gas. We have a lot of great things going statewide around risk reduction. We're doing that pilot Tech to Connect, which you guys heard about in Davenport. Eventually at some point we'll scale that up. But that's all about treatment, cognitive behavioral programming, reentry. Again, I'm very hopeful we'll be seeing results in the near future on how that's working. So just great stuff. Recruitment and retention. As Warden Don mentioned, they're continue to hire people. That's not just ICIWs across the state. We've had our foot on the gas now for it seems like for a couple years now, trying to recruit and retain. Recruitment is great, but you have to be able to retain your staff, right? So as you guys probably know, I mentioned that we hired a recruitment retention officer in central office who's working with the prisons and the community-based corrections if they need help around just recruitment retention strategies. This year, I'd say we're at the fair for the first time. I don't know if any of you stopped by, but it was a great experience. We're in the Varied Industries building. We were like right by the door. I loved it because I went out and got food all the time. The fair 10 pounds, that's fine. I'm okay with that. It was great because it was an opportunity. Our display was amazing. It was so professional. And we had a varied group of staff. So we always had 3 staff on. So we had some from the central office, some from the prisons, and some from the CBC. Sometimes the combination looks different depending on the day, but the feedback was incredible. And I would tell you, we've looked at some metrics during the fair and after, and I believe during the fair we've seen a spike in applications. So that's a good sign. So we plan on going back, but it was great. I had an opportunity to work with IMCC staff and work with a psychologist and a correctional officer, and we had a blast. And the people that were coming up to us were thanking us and thanking the staff for their service. Retired people were coming up to us, we're like, come on back, and we were trying to poach as many people as we could from other departments. But it was great. It was a very, very positive experience. So that's one big thing that we've done. But we're still doing things like job fairs, working with community colleges, we're doing social media, we're doing billboards, we're doing radio ads, we're doing tours, we're doing we're on an Indeed page now. I mean, we're not going to stop. We know we have some vacancies across our state, specifically for correctional officers and nurses, and we're foot on the gas. And it's a very competitive market, but I think what we've been doing a really good job of is talking about how important the work is. That if you're a public servant, you're protecting your communities. It's a challenge, right? And it's a rewarding career. No day will ever be the same. Every day is different. So we're really trying to get that message out. It's a great career, and you can really change people's lives. So we've been working on that, and we'll keep you posted as we continue to put our foot on the gas. We also had some staff attend the end of Watch Ride, which was to honor Lorena Schulte and Bob McFarland in PO Day. That was held in the 5th District. I know Sally attended, so we appreciate Sally representing. We also were in a K-9 competition. As you know, we love our K-9 competitions. We're pretty awesome at it. So United States Police K-9 Association Region 21 had a competition. The trials basically included obedience, agility, suspect search, and article search and apprehension. So we took home a lot of medals, a lot of first and second places. We said our staff across the state that work for the K-9s do an excellent job. I think we're one of the best in the country. I mean, we just, year after year, we just rank very high in terms of what we take home in terms of medals. Another update on our religious and volunteer services. We are finally going on video religious services. As you know, we've been have a kind of a phased approach to open up religious services and volunteer services.
prior to the bigger spike in the pandemic. So we have religious services back online. We're now accepting applications for in-person religious activities. And then our next phase is the other volunteer services will open up. Now, we are being very thoughtful around and strategic around what we're opening up to. What I mean by that is I mean that we want to make sure that, one, these volunteer services are mitigating risk and improving protective factors. And we also have to look at, too, what kind of staffing and space available we have. But the biggest thing is we want to make sure that the volunteer services we provide are going to have an impact on reentry. And as mentioned, reentry starts day one. And we want to make sure that not only the programs we offer, our core programs, but our volunteer programs offer that mitigation of that risk and build those protective factors. So we're looking at all that stuff now. Also, we are working on hiring a CIO, a Chief Information Officer. We have never had a Chief Information Officer in corrections. And we do a lot of IT around, for the incarcerated individuals, for staff, for training, all these things. So we really want to get organized and be more thoughtful, strategic, and develop a strategic plan for IT. Develop, goals, 3 to 5 year goals. Just be really thoughtful around that, and then be able to collaborate across other state agencies and shore up resources. So that will help really kind of start developing a structure for our IT system in the state. So probably the next time I see you all, I'll be making an announcement, and that person will be here with me. Finally, we were at the American Probation Parole Association in Chicago at the end of this month. Sally and a lot of her team were there too. We were presenting on Tech to Connect. I can tell you that from what I've heard, we've got a lot of great feedback, and everyone wants to know how we're doing Tech to Connect because it's so innovative, it's so thoughtful. It's basically using tablets to provide programming and cognitive behavior programming. So it works with reentry and does treatment too. So I'm very excited at some point to get those results, but yeah, just very proud of the work we're doing. And so, that's all I have for my update. So if you guys have any questions, happy to answer those now. Come on, Larry, don't disappoint me.
Well, I'm gonna just, I commend you for the recidivism improvement, but we have a long way to go from where we were in 2015, because in 2015, my recollection is we were maybe in the upper 20s, somewhere around 28, 29, I believe, at recidivism.
FY11, we were in 29, we were 29.8.
Yeah.
And then 15, we were at 31.9.
Okay.
But our lowest was around FY11, not the lowest, but in terms of, looking back like 10 plus years, it was about 29.8, so under 30%. Yeah, and so we have ways to go.
But I'm excited about things like the apprenticeship program and giving people the opportunity to have good paying jobs after they get out. I think that probably does more than anything else. I realize there's a lot of other factors, but I think that's something that hasn't existed in the past.
Yeah.
It does exist now, which is great.
Absolutely, and kudos to Dan and his team, and Dane, they have done amazing work in terms of building their apprenticeship program over time. I think we're up to 29 or 30 apprenticeships, yep. I believe currently you have maybe, 290 enrolled right now, around 290 people enrolled in apprenticeship programs. So, and at some point we're gonna share with you, and I can't knock out the cat out of the bag, so don't worry, Nick, but we're gonna share with you some of the results from our apprenticeship program. And there's actually been a study conducted by CJJP, and we'll be sharing those here probably with you in October. But it looks very good, it's very promising, and we're gonna continue to build those programs.
It sounds like you're making good progress on the staffing front. Specifically, how's it going with the medical staff? That was an area of trouble back then.
Yeah, usually, it's with, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, with RNs, the nursing shortage, it's been tough. I think it's, we get people in, but there's also people going out, because it's such a competitive field, because you're competing with people who are getting like $15,000 bonuses. And so, we're trying to recruit people, again, talk about what we do, how it's so unique, and how different it is from a nurse that works, at a hospital or a clinic. Because you're in the city within the walls, right? And you get to know these people, whereas when you work out in the community, sometimes you never see the people again. So you build these relationships not only with your team, but those incarcerated individuals. So we're continuing to work on it. I think we're kind of holding steady, but we do have some vacancies to fill yet. But these guys do an amazing job.
You try to appeal to their, whatever it is that says, when you're working with the same people, you get to know these people.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. Just want to know what your strategy was and how it's going.
Yeah, we're working on it.
And then IT, how is IT structured now? Do you have IT
It's pretty flat. It's like, so we have a lot of, so we call them IT5s, and they're basically like one of the highest level in our organization. They all have different specialties. And they some work in central office, some work in different prisons. They obviously support their prisons, but they support the state. But there's no one that's actually over them that is the decision maker in terms of project management, strategic plan, setting goals. And so we've been just very flat for a long time. We get it done, and they do an amazing job. I think this is just another way for us to enhance what we're doing because we have post-secondary, as Jim knows, post-secondary education, the second chance Pell Grants going in a lot of our prisons. We have to have the IT structure to manage that, all the programming, our learning center, our system. So we want to make sure that we have a good direction when it comes to IT because it's such a big part of what we do. But they do an amazing job. It's just adding a little more structure to what we have now.
I'm pretty surprised that there wasn't, a department like this needs to be on that, so I'm glad you're at least moving in that direction.
Me too.
That's all for me. Everyone else? All right.
Thank you, appreciate it.
All right, Steve Dicker up with FY 2023 telephone rebates.
Thank you, Webster. Every year we have to present for approval for the board how we're going to spend down some of those monies that are coming in through the telephone rebate fund. And what that is, that's when our incarcerated individuals and their families, of course, have phone calls. Money is produced through that. And what that is supposed to be used for the Code of Iowa is inmate beneficial types of expenditures. So we've kind of got a list of things here that I'm proposing. Some of it is very similar to what we've had in the past, and a couple newer things that we're looking to move towards. So our first thing is education. That one has been in place for quite some time. We take $500,000 and put it right into inmate education. And what that does is that funds our relationships with the community colleges to provide educational services of the secondary type of programming. So you're looking for people getting GEDs, literacy, and those basic educational requirements. We want to make sure people are gaining that as part of their stay and putting them in a better place before they get ready to re-enter society. So that's our first one. That one has been in place for a number of years at that rate. We also have a couple new things or newer things. We had proposed an amendment in May that kind of started this. We're just now getting it off the ground. We've done 28E agreements with the DOT and with the IWDs, Workforce Development and Department of Transportation. Department of Transportation, we've got one in place, a relationship already with one individual, but this enhances that and puts two more individuals that allow for our incarcerated individuals to get IDs before they leave, to progress on paying fines and such, so when they get out, it'll make it much more easier to obtain driver's licenses and those types of things. So we've got two projected in that for the DOT at $200,000, and that basically pays for those employees that the Department of Transportation would hire for those purposes. Similar with workforce development, we have workforce advisors in a number of our prisons right now that are working with our incarcerated population to obtain employment before they leave or prepare for employment, and partnering with those outside entities, whether it be private sector companies and such, to try and bridge that and have employment before these people even leave our facilities. So we're once again adding two more individuals, enhancing that partnership through these funds, and putting two more in place. And I believe that those are actually going to be at Fort Dodge and Clarinda, I think, are the two where those are. The DOT staff will float within all our facilities to take care of those needs. So $160,000, similar type of thing. Our thought on this is, this is a direct inmate benefit. This is preparing them, putting them in a better place upon their release from our facilities, but also, enhancing what we've already kind of got that's working, making sure that we're progressing towards that. We will most likely be looking for these to be funded in some way, shape, or form, either through our department or through those other departments, through requests in the future. To the legislature as such. So this is a way to be able to pay for those, enhance it. We know that it's working and providing benefit. Let's use these funds for those purposes now, but hopefully it's not a long-term situation. The inmate law library is something that we have done for a number of years, provides legal resources to our incarcerated population at all of our facilities through the kiosks. So that's $83,000, very similar, like I said, to what we've done in the past. The telephone administration, we do have one position that functions at Iowa State Penitentiary that oversees this fund, and that person is the one paying the bills for the telephone companies, the ICM, those relationships and such, watching the money come in and out. So that's a staff member at Iowa State Penitentiary that administers this. And then we've just got a small smattering of $7,000 for translation services and miscellaneous. Things that may or may not come up depending on how that system is used. Sometimes there is expenditures as such. So overall, the $1,013,000, it is up a little bit from where we have been in the past. We've kind of floated in between $800,000 and $1 million spending it on an annual basis. But we do have a pretty substantial balance in that account right now, and really that needs to be used for the purposes of helping our population. So we've got about $1.2 million in that account currently. Typically, within a year, there's about, in FY22, about $4.6 million went through that account in some way, shape, or form. So most of that, of course, gets sent to the telephone companies and those relationships. But we are more than paying for our portion of how we're spending this money. So we would expect that these rates would continue, this money would be available. Kind of where we had before, the thing that kind of dropped off of this from the previous year, we had been supporting the free phone calls and the free mails during the pandemic. Of course, now that visitation is back open, we've got video visitation in place. We don't believe that that's necessarily necessary at this point in time. We've got those other opportunities. But while it was in place, the pandemic and shutting some of those things down, we did think that that was an absolute necessary type of thing to fund through this. So that has freed up the ability to do some of these other things. So I guess I would open it up for questions from the board. This is an action item, so it will need to be voted upon.
Steve, as far as the staffing positions that are created by this fund, are those considered long-term positions? How are you going to fund those positions in the future if this fund turns the other way?
Yep. So once again, we've got more than enough to fund this for a number of years with those positions as such. We would expect that these would be long-term positions. We would just expect that we would look another route after a couple years. We know that right now that the climate is not to necessarily add a lot of things, as you can see, or you will see in a little bit with the staff school budget. But at the same time, we know that there will be an opportunity at some point in the future. And like I said, whether that's us or our partners, DOT and IWD, once again, they've already got employees in those positions. This is just an enhancement. We would expect by showing those results that we're getting from those programs, that somebody would be able to go forward and ask for permanent funding for that. And at some point, it wouldn't come out of this. But we've got a number of years where this would not be a problem. So.
And then the other question I have, I know once upon a time, the Ombudsman's office had a great deal of interest in how this program was administered. Is this something that we bounce off them? Do they know these numbers before you present them to us? Are they still looking closely at this program?
They do ask questions periodically about our rates and such as far as what we're charging for those phone calls. We're well within and below the thresholds that we're allowed to charge for the phone calls. That's more where they're interested in. It's not necessarily, maybe some of what we're spending on, but as long as we're within the confines of what the code allows, I think we're in a good spot. So, yeah.
Can you speak a little on what the IWD workforce advisors do, or what the job is?
Sure, and I don't know if Rochelle is actually here, and you know what, she's actually in one of these positions right now, so I want her to kind of speak to what you do,
Yeah, sure. So we have 4 what we call reentry advisors, one here at Mitchellville, one in Rockwell City, one in Mount Pleasant, and one in Newton. And then as he said, we're gonna add one in Fort Dodge and Orinda. So 6 out of 9, that's like, whew, never thought that would happen when I did it 4 years ago. Pretty excited. So it's voluntary service, right? So what we're finding is if someone is coming in asking for services, anything with employment, they're wanting all of it. Like they want their resume redone, they want to know about post-secondary education, they might want to be involved in one Department of Corrections registered apprenticeship programs, and then the last piece of work with them is career exploration. So wanting to launch them into a career You know, historically, knowing that this population tends to have 1 or 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet financially, we are seeing an increase in the wages. You heard a couple stories from Joan, so we are seeing higher wages and more employers that are willing to hire people, not only with a criminal history. I think that was the focus before, but now it's like right out of incarceration. So we have employers we work with. We'll do cold calls if someone, you know, I lost my job because I got arrested, then we'll work with them and call the employer and say, hey, can this person come back? And it's also trying to find, like also mentioned earlier, the individualized services. We don't want to put everybody into a career. We want to get them into something that they're going to be successful in. They can stay there for the retention piece, and they can also make a great livable wage. So it's a lot of, you know, networking, and again, that exploration piece. It can be just as simple as a resume, that's it, or all the way to following out the door and getting them a job before they're released. That's the goal. Sometimes it's just an interview virtually. Department of Corrections has let us, you know, move to virtual with everybody else in the world. So we're doing job interviews virtually in the office there with the advisor and the individual, so they can see them, meet them, talk to them, you know, see if they'd be a good fit. And then, you know, or have them stop into the office during these hours when they get out. It's any type of connection we can make to break down some of those barriers that they won't have to deal with when they get out as far as employment. In a nutshell.
And this is a neat way to pay for that. It's going to be a tracking placement.
Yep, so we follow up with them 30 days out, and then we'd like to also follow up 6 months out. There's been some changes where we're trying to get information like from the field to put it into the icon so we can run reports easier. Data is always a question. Of course, governor's office is always interested in that information too. We've been fully staffed in those 4 positions now for 4 years. So with Iowa Tracking Recidivism, 3-year period, I think this is the first opportunity we've had a really good pool that we can look at, you know, 2019, 2020, 2021. So I think that's something that's probably coming, and I'll work with Department of Corrections to go after that again. We did try to gather some, but it's just a little difficult with, you know, our case management system and their case management system. Of course, they don't talk to each other. So trying to dissect that and go through that information. We're obviously very interested in what recidivism rate is for the people that are engaged in services and don't have employment pre-release. We're hoping it's better. We feel it's better. But we'd like to show that, again, to justify that there's a need here and a service that is, you know, important before they're released.
So thank you very much.
And we have kind of aimed at those workforce advisors positions into releasing facilities. So this expansion to Clarinda and Fort Dodge, those are more of some of our medium facilities. So we're kind of expanding into those. They do release, but maybe not the same capacity that a Rockwell or Mount Pleasant or maybe the ICIW does. So but we're just providing more opportunities for our folks.
Anyone else? All right, thank you, Steve. All right, good.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, so that's an action item. Do I have a motion to approve the 2023, FY 2023 telephone rebates?
Support, I'll move that.
So do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, otherwise say nay. The ayes have it. And I'm just gonna approve. Next up, Director, 2024 budget request.
That's you. Sorry, Steve.
That's all right.
I think I've done this before.
Just grab the.
I thought it was the real set.
You need to start.
We're ready for it anyway. So we do have status quo budget request that we have submitted as requested by the governor's office. That is the blue shaded document. So I'll kind of quickly walk through. I mean, there's not a lot here, but 414.7 million in expenditures or budgeted appropriations. The one thing that we do have to do is we've got a little bit of money still in our $10 million fund that we needed to allot. So that 243,797 in that second column of numbers, that basically we're putting it in central office for the purposes of it can be used for purposes of anybody, any of our needs in our institutions. You put it in one other place and it gets a little more difficult as to specifically allocating it towards that. Our initial thought was pharmacy is probably going to need some money, and this allows us to still do that, but still feel out where pharmacy spending is during 24. I know we've got some other things in the works of trying to decrease some of those expenses as well. So that's really what this 24 budget request does, is just allocate that to central office out of the 834 appropriation, which was our $10 million. The remainder, as you remember, in 23 we allocated the majority of that those monies to prisons and our CDC districts as such. So most of it is already in those other numbers for the districts and the institutions. So that basically encompasses a status quo budget. It's still on the far right is the $414.7 million. Once again, that's the only allocation is distribution of those funds of the $10 million. So I'll start with that. If you've got questions on that portion before I move to the next section. Okay. So then we've got our appropriations for capitals. We've got two different funds that we get capital funding through. Our first is the Rebuild Iowa Infrastructure Fund, and that would be the sideways sheet. A request for, and it covers a 5-year period, 24 through 28. We do have a number of projects that existingly have been on that list. Fortunately, we're starting to move those things up a little bit. As you know, that in 23 we did receive the remainder of the funding necessary for the Clarendon Kitchen project. So that was the bulk of what we had gotten, so that will move that one off of the project and some of these other things into it. I wanted to just kind of highlight the requests that we have allocated for FY24. We've got an apprenticeship building to be constructed at Mount Pleasant at $1.2 million. We've got some electrical upgrades at Oakdale at IMCC for $2.9 million. We've got a cooling tower and treatment space in the first district for $232.5 million, or $232,500. Sorry, that's a big difference. And then we've got some of the things that we'd love to do, we just haven't had the ability to fund in the past. So our air conditioning at ASP, we know that that's a need. We know that it's something we love to do, but it is an expensive project. So $1.2 million towards that project that we would ask for funding in 24. And then the other large project is a hot and cold water loop system. We've had some issues at Newton for quite some time with that system. It is a very expensive system. Right now it's below ground, and I think we need to have it above ground so that we can get to it. When we have spills or leaks and stuff, it's hard to find, it's hard to locate, and thus to fix. That is a little over $10 million project split over the 2 years. So that kind of encompasses, I guess I did miss our CBC generators in our residential facilities to make sure that we have power at all times. Power would go out. And we did have some issues during the grade show and stuff, so it kind of pointed as to the need. So some of our facilities have that and some don't. That would get those needs met if there were ones that don't. The only thing I wanted to really, there's a number of projects on here of facility improvements, replacements at a couple of our districts. We also have our Mount Pleasant air conditioning project in our 25 request or ask, and that's a $5 million, a little bit higher request, but wanted to point out that is being asked for in our proposals. So we have to split that over the 5 years. Doesn't mean that the legislature or the governor's office can't come back and say, hey, I'd really prefer to fund something that you have in 25 and 24. It doesn't rehearse that, doesn't disallow that. It just kind of shows where we think our needs are, the EDC and such. So that document, I'm not going to go through the entirety of it, but as you can see, there's a lot of needs. Total at the far right, $53.7 million. There's probably other projects that we could put on this list as well, but we're trying to prioritize and keep it to things that we think maybe would get funded in the near future. So, any questions on that sheet before I move over to the technology?
So is the year, it's under, for example, the ASP air conditioning, that signal is going to be repaired in 2024?
That would be that our request is that money would be funded in that year. Well, once again, where we have the list as an all-encompassing, the legislature could come back and say, hey, that's more of we'd rather fund that than some of these things that we have in 24.
So they can pick and choose.
They can pick and choose as to what they get.
Okay, so also with ASP and Mount Pleasant, does that include AC needs after you fix those two, or are there other ones?
Those are our biggest. We may have isolated smaller places, there's a smaller unit here or there, but those are our biggest needs as far as facility wide. Mount Pleasant, of course, is the majority of that facility is not air conditioned. ASB is we have a living unit, I believe, that one building that needs the air conditioning. So it's not necessarily to say that there's not an office here or there that may still need air conditioning, but this would meet the majority of what we have for needs for our incarcerated population.
I think about those hot people all the time. I overheat easily, and so it's terrifying to even think about people sitting in those places without air conditioning. That's all I got for this patient.
All right, no problem.
Is the apprenticeship building started, or are you just waiting for the funding? What's the purpose of that building?
So I think it's just to provide additional opportunities at that site, and whether that's outside employers coming in and providing training and technology in that building, or us just being able to expand those opportunities for our folks of existing apprenticeship opportunities. If there's anything else that you...
So I think they're planning a wood shop and some metal work there, so they had the apprenticeships established, but they just need more space, as Steve said.
More of a shop, everything.
More of a shop.
Yeah, okay.
Can I follow up with that? How many people were you gonna pretend or plan to serve in that building?
I can't answer that, Jim. I'm not sure Director knows, but I guess a couple dozen. 1.2 million doesn't buy a lot of building anymore, does it?
No.
Are they gonna be air conditioned?
All right, so the third piece is our technology reinvestment fund, and so that's the one that's on the portrait. And once again, this is a pretty expansive list as to different things that, what our needs are for technology. I did have a meeting not too long ago, a couple weeks ago, with our senior IT staff to try and gauge what their needs were and make sure that we had their needs being addressed on this. A couple of things, we did have institutional camera system upgrade on our previous request last year. We did get $1 million towards that, but we still have quite a bit of need for that. So that's that $1.8 million that's still on this as our top priority. We know that safety and security in our facilities is very important, and that's one of the ways to meet that. We do have switch replacements at ICIW and IMCC, things that need to occur, and this came from our senior IT, as well as the server replacement at ICIW and IMCC. Those are just things that have to happen every so often to make sure that our systems and equipment are functioning operationally in the best capacity. We have an enterprise data warehouse that we have for $2.5 million. Sarah, if you've got if you want to speak to what that would do.
So currently all of our information for data and research is managed. As you guys know, you've heard us talk a lot about our ICON case management system. And that system has been incredible. But as we move to enhance our data analytic capabilities, where we start engaging in predictive analytics or various dashboards to help people manage just very basic operational functions. We really need this enterprise data warehouse in order to be able to take us to that next level with research and analytics. Like I said, as of right now, the case management system that we have is excellent for the management of our supervised population. But in order to take us to the next level for research and analytics, where we can start doing some really incredible things, we need that platform for the enterprise data warehouse to be able to facilitate that.
What software are you using now? What are you looking at moving to?
Well, the enterprise data warehouse would be the platform that various softwares would sit on.
And what is that platform?
I don't know. We would hire a vendor. We've got a few different vendors that we're talking with. I'm not sure of the process for selecting a final vendor for that, so I can't speak to any specifics regarding software.
Well, could we get your options when you're considering that? I did enterprise asset management for a long time after college.
Oh.
So I know a lot about the underlying things there, so I'd like to know what you're looking at if possible.
Yeah, we love your input, and we're very much preliminarily in this stage. We just know that it's something that we're needing, so.
Couple of the things I wanted to highlight, and then I'll kind of move on to one of the other large things on the list. We've talked about the tablet project in the districts. There is money in here to expand that. We're always looking to expand that. We actually have another district coming into the fold. Originally, we funded 2 for the pilot, second and the 7th. We've got the 6th, I think, that is now coming into the fold for that project as well. And we're serving more and more of our prisons with that as well. So not only the outside, but we're bringing that treatment inside so that they're preparing for their release and getting that started before being released. So there's some money for that. The other thing below that, the institution body cameras. We have body cameras in several of our facilities right now, but we want to make sure that we get those safety features into as many as we can and ultimately all of our facilities for purposes of keeping our staff and our population safe. So that $325,000 will help towards that project. The other large thing that I wanted to kind of throw out there is we've got a statewide medical icon upgrade here in our second column for FY25. And once again, this is the legislature and governor's office can decide what they want to fund out of all these years in 24. But it's a fairly large project. It's something that we're going to have to move forward towards at some point in time. But we wanted to get it on here. So it's about $2.2 million is the quote that we kind of estimate that we've got at this point in time. And what that does is make sure that we can be as efficient as possible in that medical arena. Our nurses and our doctors and such can operate with our ICON information in a manner that works for them. Right now, it doesn't always work for our medical professionals in the best capacity, so this would allow it to function. And we know that there are some deadlines out there that some of our stuff will not function at the level that it's functioning even now. So we know that this is on our horizon. We need to make sure that we are getting it addressed at some point in time. So we want to make sure we get it on our list at this point in time. So other than that, like I said, there's camera systems, there's phone systems, there's a lot of technology that just at some point in time needs to be replaced. So additional switches and such, fiber upgrades. So want to make sure that we're being all encompassing. There are institution projects, statewide projects, and CBC projects on this list. So we want to make sure that we're taking care of all those needs. So I guess I would entertain any questions on any of the 3 areas that I presented on, and then would look for an action item to approve. The next steps for this, just so you kind of know, we have to submit our budget requests in the I3 budget system by the end of September, beginning of October, for Department of Management. So we would of course enter this information as it's been presented in that system. And once again, it's a lot easier when it's a status quo for me. It's not necessarily what I want, but it's what we have to work with. So
Normally, I know in past years, it seems like we asked for the status quo, but they've given us more money. Is that kind of the way it worked so far the last few years?
I think that's kind of the way that the governor has kind of looked is everybody submits status quo, and then she can go in and look at what her priorities are as far as additional. Number one, look at the dollars to see what's available to be able to be appropriated. Knowing that there's going to be salary adjustment in the spring that has to be funded, but then look at her priorities. Department heads, of course, have those conversations with the governor's office, Department of Management, on an ongoing basis between now and December or January, when the governor would come out with her priorities or her budget, and all pending election test. So yeah, that's the kind of the process is. This is kind of the starting. It's kind of put that base in place, and then conversations are had at a higher level of what the needs are of the departments and what is there to be able to be funded.
Okay, and then as far as the IT fund and the capital fund, are they all part of the same budget request, or do they go in? Does the money come from different departments or different allocations by the legislature, like the IT fund? Doesn't that come from a different source?
Correct, yes. There's money that's physically appropriated to the Technology Reinvestment Fund. And I'd have to look and see where that's money's originating from, but it is completely separate, it's not part of the general fund. It's being isolated or siphoned off. And same thing with the Rebuild Iowa Infrastructure Fund. Money is allocated directly to that fund from somewhere in state government. And that is what's being used statewide for all these requests that all the departments are submitting. Yeah, this would just be ours compared to everybody else's. And they have to, of course, look at those needs. And we do go in February and do a presentation in front of the Infrastructure Committee, the Legislative Infrastructure Committee, to share what our needs are. And at that point in time is really and truly, yeah, the governor has some recommendations, but that's where that's their opportunity to hear directly from us as to what our needs are. And they do that for all the different departments. So,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
All right, with that, I ask for a motion to approve the fiscal year 24 budget request.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The fiscal year 24 budget is approved. Budget request. We now move into public comment. Do we have anyone in the public that would like to?
Hello, my name is Jerry Bogart. My wife Tracy is serving a life sentence here in Mitchellville. And even though I've been with Tracy 9 years, this is the first time I've been able to put faces with some of the names that she talks about. So that's kind of interesting, only favorably that she talks about. So, nobody should worry about that. 3 years ago, and for many years before that, the visiting rooms at the Department of Corrections were open all day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, as well as Monday mornings. Now, we are limited to 2 in-person visits that often only end up being an hour and 40 minutes by the time all the procedures are followed. And we have to sign up for those visits at least several days in advance. So, at the beginning of the pandemic, video meetings, video visits were used to maintain some semblance of connection. And yet, here we are at an in-person Board of Corrections meeting. Why is that? It's because we realize that video visits are a pale substitute for in-person meetings. That's true for business situations like this, and it's even more true for family relationships. So we are still in a position where we're forced to spend less than 4 hours a week in person with our loved ones. We have to sign up for those well in advance, and there's no flexibility if our schedule changes in the last 48 to 72 hours before the visit. So the restrictions on the visiting, on in-person visiting, were established to allow the visiting rooms to reopen after COVID. The worst of COVID passed. We are now being told that these same restrictions on in-person visitation are now permanent for a completely different set of reasons than COVID. So that's frustrating. And in fact, if one of your reasons is to reduce or eliminate drugs coming into the prison through the visiting room, I would humbly suggest that you would develop a different set of restrictions than the ones that are currently in place. So, my hope is that we could return to the visitation procedures that were existent before. Basically, flexible check-in, flexible check-out, no advance sign-up, and no time limits. Other states, and I know specifically that this is true for Missouri and Nevada, have returned to those more flexible visitation procedures. So it is possible to do, and it is being done. So our hope is that you will help us get our time back with our families through returning to some of those earlier visitation procedures. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the comment, Jared. standard, the board doesn't respond to comments at the meeting, so we'll look into an SOP for them and try to get that to you as soon as possible. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Yes.
I'm Ellen Oliver Moffett. My son is incarcerated at Fort Madison, and he has been there for about 7 years. He has asked me to come in his advocate role with 2 issues. The first, and I'm very nervous, so please bear with me, and I also social worker by profession, so I try to get this despite my uncomfortable position in my family life. Okay, so he has asked me to come and speak about the food at Fort Madison. He has said that there is significant deterioration in the food over the time he's been there. The last year, it's been extremely worse, to the point where there's hardly any protein being served. More and more carbs. Also, he's obtained some information from someone in the kitchen or something that the cost per meal is 60 cents per day, as opposed to 1985 when it was $1.25 per meal, or not per day, per meal. A lot of times, more often than not, more often recently, leftover food is being served. Sometimes it's spoiled and people are getting sick after that, not just him, but others. Expired milk being served. I know that there's been calls to the prison about the expired milk. I just think it's very important to at least have some protein in there. And fresh fruits and vegetables. I get the money part. I get that. I mean, I'm spending more at the grocery too, and I understand that. I just think that there needs to be a balance. Also, if you would also check the amount of inmates at that facility that are on omeprazole, which a lot of us take for GERD, and it's pretty common medication down there as well for GI distress, as well as there's been some incident of food poisoning down there with people getting, well, just to be real frank with you, diarrhea after some meals, and then also having to get an antifungal for their skin irritation because of the digestive symptom of diarrhea. So I really just think that there needs to be a look taken at the food and the particularly the leftover food. He says that a lot of the guys are still hungry and there's more incidents of people stealing food off trays that are not eaten, and people, getting into tussles about that, and it just seems like a real, problem down there. So that was the one issue. The other issue also touches my heart because it's the one of Beth, you talked about that, the religious services. Now, mind you, I don't know, I'm sure there's a lot of Catholics at that prison, but there's not that many that have traditionally gone to the Catholic services. David has done that, and he's taken a leadership role in that. When they have priests and the groups coming in from the community. And, since COVID, obviously, they've had nothing, and really, honestly, they've had nothing since in person, not even communion, since, COVID. And, they keep being told that, they're going to have, they're doing an onboarding process. And, he said the chaplain, can't tell him what's going on. Maybe it's more active, you're being more active about that than they know. But they're being told kind of like, this. And, I just want you to know that it's not the diocese that's the problem, okay? Because I have contacts in the Diocese of Davenport. I've talked to them. They're willing to go, and they serve those parishes down there, Burlington, Fort Madison. They take turns coming there. I have a female friend in Colfax who has a son who was ordained in Colfax during COVID. He was put down in Burlington, and that was the plan. He was going to do their part, that parish's part of the prison ministry. So they're ready to go, and it's sorely needed. And I would hate to see another holiday season go. And if you can't get the groups to come in, maybe, Beth, if you could arrange for 1 or 2 people to be certified to lead the priest, to come in and get communion, and give them communion until you can get those masses going again. And I think it was only every 2 weeks they had a mass. But it's so important, because this is, these are guys that are there for life. And it's very important, the religious, and I don't even know what's going on with Protestants. All I know is that there's a Muslim person going in to see the Muslims. That's all I know. And so I'm just asking that you, try to set that up, that process, because I think the parishes are ready to go. And if you could do that and get that going before the holidays, I would really appreciate that. It is very important. I think there's a lot of Hispanic prisoners in that group as well. And then I know you were speaking about the visiting, and I tell you, that Emilio it's a pain. It really is. I still haven't got it figured out how to do in person. Not in person, but video. And I know I've got an Android phone, and I can only get so far, and then I can't connect. And I've been certified and all of that stuff, and so my husband and I, we've just been going down about once a month. It's a hell of a long drive, but we've been going down once a month, and we did the phone calls, but the video, not being able to do the video really makes a difference, because we were supplementing that through COVID. And I know that takes your staff's time, and I get that. I get a lot of this stuff, And then farming out the mail, I just wanna tell you that's not working. Farming out that mail, you know what, it took 2 weeks for my son's birthday card to get to him after I put it in the mail.
Unfortunately, looks like we have a full one, so we're gonna have to cut the comments a little.
Thank you.
Sure, thanks for speaking.
I'm sorry, and I get the problems that you have serving your population, I really do. So I do really get that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone else gonna speak? Okay, with the full room we have, let's try and keep it at 2 to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Mine's very short. I'm not a speaker. I'll probably stumble a little bit, but what I have to say, I think is very, very important. that's concerning physical visits versus video visits. And I don't know, I think everybody knows about when a new baby, especially in the new areas, they are, in the 90s, they started giving skin touch. They even put the babies on the, like this one father said, on his chest, button his shirt, and these babies are thriving, and they're getting out earlier because of that. But they've also, through a director of Touch Research Institute from Miami Medical School, says human touch is very critical for all of us, mostly for our physical health. Physical touch stimulates pressure receptors, which slows down the nervous system and essentially calms you by reducing your stress levels. And we know all of our people, even us, we all have stress levels. It says hugging, touching, not just important for infants, important for all of us. Touch provides comfort. The lack of physical touch is a negative effect to both of us on both sides.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Ma'am, the last speaker, could you identify yourself just for the record, please?
I'm sorry, Maxine Ann Leddington, I'm Tracy Ann Harden. Gold. Anyway, I'm Tracy's mother.
Thank you.
I'm Cindy Potto, and I'm married to Lisa Helen. We've been together almost 17 years. I've been coming here every weekend for almost 17 years for visits. Yeah, COVID put a big damper on a lot of us. And these visits, we're trying to get as much in as we can on the short amount of visits that we get. So Jerry touched on a lot of what we're concerned with. Yeah, we'd like to have our visits back. We understand the contraband. We don't want it in any more than you all want it in. We want our loved ones safe and secure just as much as we want the staff safe and secure. We're not here to break any rules. We just want to be with our families. Thank you.
Anyone else with public comments? Alright, hearing none, so we're moving into open discussion. Board members.
Jim, we had talked about the scheduling for next year as far as whether we're gonna meet or not, and I guess, I certainly would like, maybe Joanna to put something together to be looked at. I know there's some thought that maybe we don't have to meet every month or something like that, and I'm certainly going to consider that, but I'm thinking if the staff could put something together that they think would be appropriate as far as for next year, that we could discuss that next month at Fort Dodge, that would be great.
Would you like just a couple of different options?
Yeah.
Do you have anything in mind?
One of them should include quarterly at least.
A monthly, quarterly,
Okay.
every other month.
Yeah.
We can come up with a couple of different options.
Yeah, and Zoom is certainly appropriate, but I know it's helpful when we visit some of the institutions as well, so it works some of that in, but I think Zoom works good,
Yeah,
so.
I think we definitely need to have September meetings, especially for budget. Right, so
Yeah.
if we could meet at different times during the month, does that work as well, or would you prefer always first Friday?
I don't know whether it's a statutory thing, is it a statutory thing that we have to meet on Fridays?
Just the quarterly meetings.
It says what's convenient for the whole department.
Yeah, because I realize there's a lot of preparation for this, and so it's, May comes to mind as probably a good month to have meetings too. But, and I know during the winter months, there's gotta be some, Dick's busy with the legislature, and it's good to keep us advised of what's happening during that time as well, so.
It would also maybe incorporate some sort of in-person and
virtual, or we can every other month, in person, virtual.
We'll prepare something for the next meeting.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else? Okay, at this point, we're ready to adjourn. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Sure, I move.
Second.
And it's a-
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And we're free.